talk about something that really excites me, and that's the future industry trends that we should be preparing for now, because obviously it's a very fast-paced industry, and we should be thinking about changes before they come. Can you reveal some important music industry trends that you foresee?
So the first thing I would say is that trying to foresee trends is pointless. It's important to think about the future and imagine different scenarios in which we might, the industry and people within it might find themselves. But things are changing so quickly now that it's very hard to tell. The irony of that is, at the same time, I think there's already like a mentality that kind of like the Spotifys and Facebooks of the world are like, it's almost like a religion that, right, well, they're going to be here to stay now, because they've really have taken over the world in so many ways. Anything can change. So I think the most important thing to do is to develop like an adaptive mindset where you're kind of not holding on to any one strategy around this stuff and just being open-minded to anything that will happen. But, there's some basic things that we kind of assume will happen regardless of what platform is in place or whatever, and that's just about closer connectivity between people, and particularly between artists and their audience, I think is a really, really critical one. The other one that I think is really interesting is voice-activated speakers. So Amazon Alexa and Google Home and these kind of devices really takes the potential audience for streaming platforms and magnifies them exponentially, because then you get the soccer mums and dads who can just say, I'll play some ABBA, and the machine plays the music that they want. So it sort of takes the whole sort of visual interface out of the picture and becomes a lot more casual for the user, and that just opens up a bigger user base. And so how I've been to a number of talks about this recently, and there's no real answers yet, but thinking about how marketing music via these voice activated systems and tapping into the way people try to search for things verbally, and how that will influence how music and events are marketed into the future, is in a very nascent stage now, but I think will be very important.
Yeah, and it's amazing, isn't it? Just the amount of new developments in technology all the time. What do you think in terms of that technology? What are some of the ways that artists can utilise the technology that's existing now to make decisions about their career?
Yeah, well, I mean, the back end of Spotify is a very data-rich, place to be. So, you can learn about where in the world your core fan base is. So instead of going, I'm going to tour Australia because I'm Australian and I live here, maybe your core audience base is in Iceland, and you'd sell a lot more tickets by being there. So just information like that's really important. I think there's an app called Parler that I think is really interesting in terms of kind of connecting people with artists with people who have a home that they want to open up to have a gig, and being able to build whole tours around that, because potentially that's a lot less expensive in terms of overheads, and brings you into a more intimate relationship with people. I think fans increasingly want an intimate experience with the artist, and the story of the artist and the artist as a person is becoming more important again in the sea of music. Like, there's so much music now. What is the differentiating factor? And it's not just the story, but it's also particularly around social music PRs, increasingly around like social agendas or stories. So I think a wise artist has a way of sort of jacking into the zeitgeist and coming up with a way of telling the story about their music that people can resonate with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important point. It's all about the experience, all about the relationship, 100%. Yeah, how could we summarise that? What's the key nugget of wisdom to take away today? What's the key point here?
Oh, the key point is just that data is the future, but it's not the only future. So learning how to navigate that and use data to make decisions is really important. But there's always going to be something that's subjective about what we do, and that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, I'm going to throw in a little fun question at you now. If you could create a famous musician version of yourself, whose vocal abilities would you utilise?
I might go with... Can I go with a combination of people?
Yes, of course.
Given that I'm a man, I'm going to choose a male voice because that's what's, possible for my range and stuff. But I think like somewhere between Van Morrison and Jeff Buckley is a combination would, yeah.
Yeah, I would have said Jeff Buckley or Amy Winehouse actually. So
I'm people don't know this about me, but I'm just doing another record at the moment, and that's why I got into doing what I do, because I'm a musician, and those two singers are the two that have influenced me the most, I would say.
Wow, I'm glad we had this interview because I did not know that about you. What's your artist name? Do you have a persona?
This album is like a bit more of a concept project, so it will be called Golden Gate is the name of the band.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited to hear it. Thank you. Thanks so much for your time today, Joel.
Yeah, no problem.
Cheers.